1944, with his intuitive abilities awakened as a child, with dreams of feeling of guidance, where he then attended college. He's been all up and down the East Coast, but at the University of Connecticut, his experiences guided him to pursue the ministerial career along the whole East Coast, Boston, and all kinds of wonderful places. We want to hear some stories. Carol might connect with you as well. And as a minister, Reverend Chesbro has had years of counseling experience in personal, marital, and family areas, combining this with an intuitive and psychic sense. At 33, he began traveling to spiritual conferences, teaching, counseling, lecturing all over the nation and the world, and appearing on radio and television. Dan reestablished the ancient order of Melchizedek? Melchizedek. Thank you. When I did a little bit of research on that, it was very interesting. And that was in 1986. And now you have about 17,000 members, men and women, and every race from great many religious disciplines. It's an unconditional love response to a world service with primary function of order to teach love and to heal in this period of transformation on earth. Reverend Chesbro has been ordaining individuals here at Lake Harriet Spiritual Community since the 1980s. He encourages others to self-love, self-confidence, balance, and the pursuit of their higher spiritual self, helping many people to a better and more satisfying life. Lake Harriet Spiritual Community, please help me welcome Dan Chesbro.
I never used to use a bar stool to do this before, but I'm almost 80, and so you need to sit down once in a while. So I do. Yeah. Oh, great. No, it was an interesting thing to come here again. I guess Gary and I were talking before about the last time I was here, and it was in 2019. And so we all survived the plague. So here we are. I think we deserve a round of applause. I don't know how you feel about that, but I started working at 14 years old, and I worked ever since, and then the plague hit, and I was in Florida teaching ordinations, and I got on the plane, and there were people with masks on, a couple people, and I thought maybe they had colds or something like that, so I didn't know. I wasn't paying attention. And on the way home, there were more masks. I thought, oh, more colds, So I was supposed to work in Washington, D.C. the following weekend, and within that 1 week, the curtain dropped, boom, and everything was shut down, as you recall. So it was the first time in my life that I was not working. So I live in an old farmhouse that was built before the Civil War part of it was. And I never cleaned the basement, shame on me. And so I thought, well, what are you going to do? You've got no work and you've got nothing to do and nobody's around. So I went down the basement, which I could hardly do. It was so bad. It was really a foul thing to go through. But I decided to clean. I cleaned that basement. You could eat off the floor. I did such a good job. And then I painted the walls like a rainbow. I got spray cans out and I painted the walls. I had a lot of fun. And that was the first week. I said, oh my God, Needless to say, the house got really well cleaned and I got all anxious about going back to work. I had a dream one night, and in the dream I was supposed to go to Buffalo to do ordinations. And I got there and I was a little bit late getting to the thing. And there were so many people to be ordained there that they needed 2 houses to hold all these people. I thought, oh my God, this is great. So I was looking through my papers. You have those dreams out that you can't find your papers and you can't get organized, and it was one of those. And the people said, well, if you're not ready to ordain, we're leaving because we're here. We've waited for you, and now you're late. And I said, no, don't go. I'll be right back. I'll be here, So it went on from there. But I woke up from that dream, and I thought, oh, I'm going back to work because I knew that's what that meant. Well, then 2 days later, I got a phone call from Cape Cod. And they said, I know it's during the pandemic and everything, and you have restrictions and all that, we can understand, but would you be willing to come out to do ordinations? And I thought, yeah, of course I will. And they came from Texas and California and all over, so we met at this house. And I was a little bit late getting there, of course. And I walked in and I looked around and I thought, well, where are we going to have this class? Because there was no chairs set up or anything. And so the hostess came through the back door and she said, oh, we're meeting in the back. I have an office in the back. It's a separate house. I said, oh, 2 houses. Oh, okay. And I told her about the dream. So then I was back to work, and I've been working ever since, including, coming here. But the topic that I was given to talk about today was called rebirth. And I thought, okay, I can do that. That can be a lot of fun. It's like there's a comedy show where they give these guys these words and then they go out and do this comedy skit, Well, you're going to have one of those. So, rebirth. Well, with what I've learned in all my years of doing my work with people who've had near-death experiences, there is no death. So if there's no death, how can you have rebirth? It's not possible. But I know what they meant. So there's one thing that everybody in this room has in common, at least one thing. Not only in this room, but in this city and in the entire planet. And that's called birth. We've all been born at one point. And so here we are. What we all don't have in common is rebirth, or having an experience about a rebirth or another level of what that means. And I want to share with you some stories about some people who've been through that process and how they got to that experience. One of them was a young man who was in the Army in the Second World War. His name was George Ritchie. And George was a soldier, and he had contracted, pneumonia. And so they put George up in front of an x-ray machine, and they were x-raying him, and he died. Just, he didn't know it, but obviously he died. He was supposed to be in Virginia later that day to do something in Raleigh or something like that. So when he came to from he thought he went unconscious, he was in Virginia, but he didn't realize that all he had to do was think Virginia, and boom, he was in Virginia. And then he thought, I need to be back at the hospital. Boom, he was back at the hospital. Well, this was kind of unusual. Well, not only that, but the nurses and doctors were walking right through him. And then he found the room that he had left, and he looked inside the room because he was trying to find anything about him. And the only way he could recognize himself was the corpse, or the cadaver, whatever you want to call it. The hand had slipped down, and the arm had a signet ring on it, and that he recognized that was his. Well, he was so big as a spiritual entity, body. How am I going to get all of this into that? And while he was out of his body, he met different people from spiritual backgrounds. One of them was Jesus. And Jesus told him about the possible future and all of that, including the fact that we were going to invent nuclear submarines, because we hadn't done that. This was Second World War. And so he saw all that, and he had a preview of what was going to happen. He realized that where they were at that spot in the hospital was an old Indian ground. So they were still doing ceremony there, the Indians. And he was watching this future thing going on. So the past, present, future was all happening at the same time. Well, he was one of the very first people in this whole place of near-death experiencers who had ever talked about what had happened to him. Because when people would have those encounters, they never talked about it because they didn't want the rest of us to think that they were a little crazy, right? So he had a wonderful rebirth of that experience, and he spent his entire life then. He became a doctor and traveled around and talked about his death experience and what he saw and all that to help people to realize there's more. This is not just it, One of my friends from many years ago was the name of Tom Sawyer, who's not Mark Twain's friend, but a guy who actually died and came back. And we invited Dr. Ritchie to come to Rochester, New York to give a talk. So he showed up at this hotel. He walked in the door. He saw Tom Sawyer. They embraced and they wept because they recognized that they had both had a death experience, and it was their common bond. I have no idea what he talked about. That's all I remembered. They're coming together. Yeah, but it was a wonderful encounter. So either you have a near-death experience, and some of you in this group have probably gone through that, or you've had a spontaneous awakening, which is, one day you're fine, you're doing your job and whatever, all of a sudden, boom, you're aware that there's a lot more to reality than what we're all here dealing with. And then there's people like Buddha, who was determined to be found aware. And so, he was raised as a prince, and he was raised by his father so that he would never see death or age or whatever. God, he should never have met me, that's for sure. But one day he escaped from the palace, and he went out into the world, and he found sickness, he found death, he found all kinds of interesting things. And then he was determined to find out the source of sorrow and sadness and pain. What causes all this? So he joined a group of people who were sitting and basically starving themselves, trying to find reality, I guess. They would get down to eating maybe one piece of rice and having a little sip of water, and that's all they had all day. And he was emaciated. I mean, you could see his bones and everything. And one day, one young woman came up to him with a rice bowl, and she said, "Eat." And so he listened to her. And then he sat under a tree, and he said, "I'm not leaving here until I find out what the cause of everything is." And she said, "The earth is my witness." And so our history of him is that he became awakened or aware, or he had a rebirth of reality. There are some tribes, we talked about this before the group today, of folks in the South Pacific who believe that this is the dream, and when they go to sleep, that's the reality. My friend Tom Sawyer, when he had his first death experience, he had 3 of them. He said to me one day that when he went unconscious, the first one he was killed, squashed to death under a truck. And he went unconscious. He said when he woke up, he said, it was if I woke up and that was the reality, that this was the dream. I thought that was quite interesting, So his journey was unfathomable in terms of what he was able to do. But it was amazing that Buddha went out and was determined to become reborn or rebirthed. And some people are having that happen because of their near-death experience, some spontaneous awakening. But there's a process that you go through. Now, believe it or not, before you were born in this lifetime, you actually created this incarnation for yourself. Now, you may or may not believe that. You don't have to. It doesn't matter. One of my friends said to me, reincarnation is real. You don't have to believe in it. It's going to happen anyway. So don't worry about it. It's just going to take place. So he had an experience of going to a tunnel and seeing this light, and then having a new reality come into his life. But it's an interesting phenomenon when you're having a rebirthing experience, because you can actually create that possibility before you're born. Before you're born, you have 12 houses to choose from, astrologically, right? So I came through a Leo. Orange is the color for Leo. That's why I wear orange quite often as part of the Sephora of the Tree of Life, all right? And so you could have, before you were born this time, decide who your parents were going to be, what your physical condition was going to be, what your gender was going to be. All the things that are important to you in this lifetime were pre-programmed by you, and then you come into your birth experience, and then here you are. Then, of course, you don't remember all of that, training that you gave to yourself, but you have the opportunity to have the experience. So, if you're tired of what you're doing in this lifetime, create something new. You can go home today after this group gets together and sit down and decide, of all the 12 houses, which one of those 12 do you think you would really like to participate in? And just imagine it. If you did not have a happy childhood, make one up. There's nothing wrong with that. We have all this motivation. A lot of people have motivation from their birth experience. I mean, I have my oldest child was a breech birth or something like that, and so she became claustrophobic. When I took a group into the Great Pyramid, I had to be the lead duck to go up to the king's chamber, and I'm claustrophobic. Now you're going up a chamber that's about 4 by 4, and there are rails and little steps, and I'm in the front of the line, and I'm the one who basically can't be in a closed space. But I thought, well, you've got to do this, So I taught them a mantra so that it would take their minds away from their anxiety and just go up and do the darn thing. So when she got inside the Great Pyramid, I thought, how are you doing? She said, well, I followed your mantra, and here I am, But it's a thing that you can change your attitude about anything that you're doing in your life, and it shifts everything. When I ordain people, I tell them one of the things that's going to happen to you is you're going to be challenged with all of your past in this lifetime. Now, where you're sitting right now is the end result of every incarnation that you've ever had. And some people like to talk about their past lives when they were the king of Egypt, or they were whatever they were. Nobody talks about shoveling you-know-what in the stables. I always find that interesting. But anyway, you can go back into your past lives, but anything you learn about that applies to this, because this lifetime is the most important one that you've ever had. It's the end result of every one that you've ever had. And so what you do with this one is what matters, not what you did before, it's what you do right now. Now, when you leave here, and all of us will, that's part of the process, you have to be born, you have to live a while, you have to get sick, and you have to die. That was Buddha's plan. Tom Sawyer used to say, you have to be born, you have to live a while, and you have to die. I think I like his plan a little better. So anyway, in the process of being born, which you've already accomplished, and now you're living a while, at least we have. I've been here a long while, longer than I ever expected I would, but here I am. And the next process is I go back home again. Well, I've already talked to the boss about that. I have a John Deere tractor. I live out in the country, and that's when I talked to the boss. And I said, well, when I'm coming back, I'm not going to stay. I didn't stay the last time. I died in 1942, and I was born in 1944. So I came right back. There was work to do. We had a new age to birth and all that sort of thing. So when I got on the tractor recently, I told the boss again, of course, it's up to you whether this is going to happen or not. But I said, I intend to come right back. I don't want to miss anything. I mean, we've survived a plague. God, what else are we going to deal with, before this whole thing changes? Well, we've got a beautiful future to look forward to. It's called the Peaceable Kingdom. And the Peaceable Kingdom is a place where we have an opportunity to telepathically communicate with each other. I mean, you don't have to sit and listen to me. You can just get it. You would just feel it. It would be there. But we have this ability to communicate with animals, with the tree people, the stone people, and everything is just, going to work out really, really well. We're not there yet. We've got a lot to go through between now and then, and we will survive. It's going to be okay. But we have an opportunity to practice, so you can practice your rebirth by programming what it is that you would like to do in your next incarnation. So I know of the 12 houses, I know some that I might want to practice going again, maybe be a Libra or be a Capricorn or be one of those. And what is your birth date? What would be a birth time that you would like to have happen for yourself? Well, you can create one. We're kind of fun, and map out your whole future of what you want. Around Christmas time, there's a very interesting film that shows up every year. It's called A Christmas Carol. And in The Christmas Carol, as you know, is a character, Ebenezer Scrooge. And he's a miserly chap, and he's had a life experience of God knows what. But he's told by his former business partner that 3 angels are going to appear to him during the night, and they're going to show him things that will lead him toward some kind of realization, I guess. They don't say those words, but you know what it is. So there's Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future. Well, by the end of the thing, he goes through all of those 3 angels, and he wakes up, and now he's celebrating Christmas. And it was at a time in history, literally, when Christmas was almost forgotten. And so because of that story, Christmas got reborn And then now it is what it is now, which is really almost absurd. In fact, I've had so much of it, I'm ready to take a vacation from it next year. I think I'm going to skip it altogether, right? But it was an experience that he had that was a part of his rebirthing. Now, God knows you're probably not going to have 3 angels appear to you tonight and show you, probable future, but it could happen, So there's an opportunity for rebirth. All I'm saying to you is that rebirthing is a process of changing your attitude. Attitude about anything. What do you feel about this? What do you feel about that? When I ordain people, I tell them one of the things you're going to have as a challenge is to forgive, release, and let go anything from your past. And it starts at the lower chakras, and you deal with every aspect of yourself. And then when you've done that accomplishment, you will then go to the next one, until finally you've got a 1,000-petal lotus up here, and you're a golden Buddha. So every one of you in this room has the opportunity or the ability to be a Buddha. And why not? We trade ourselves off to something else, say, well, that's Buddha, that's not me. Well, there's a saying that says, well, there's Buddha, there's Buddha, there's Buddha, or any religious figure. One of my friends who passed over and came back said, when you have your opportunity in your death experience, you will encounter whatever your religious hero was or heroine, So if you're Christian, you might meet Jesus. If you're Buddhist, you might meet Buddha. If you're a Jew, you might meet Moses or Abraham or something like that. But eventually, everybody goes back to the source. And the source is a wonderful combination of just pure energy. Some people who've had near-death experience, the first thing they encounter is blackness, just total blackness. And they think they're in hell. Well, the reality is God is pure love, whatever God is, pure consciousness. And so that does not have light in it. It's just pure denseness of love. And what God did was separated itself from itself to create light. And then the light created the 7 rays and the lords of the 7 rays and all of that. And so we're part of all that system. And when you look at the rainbow, you get, the lords of the 7 rays. And in each one of us has an ability because of one of the rays that you're functioning under. My ray is green. I don't know if you can see it. But it's a healing ray. And I do a lot of healing work. But I don't do it like doctors and nurses do. I just do it with consciousness. And but you can use any tool you want. Healing comes from here, so you can take Reiki or you can take a number of different kinds of things to do your process, but it matters what matters from the heart. So to rebirth is to refine yourself. It's kind of a joke in show business that Madonna reinvents herself, right? Every 5 years or so, we've got like a new Madonna out there. And so why restrict yourself to just Madonna? Reinvent yourself. If you're not happy with who and what you are, change. Change. Make it happen. You know what you're going to find? The people around you aren't going to want you to change. They're going to want you to stay the same. They're going to want you to be the person that they're accommodating, in their consciousness. There's a little slogan in Buddhism or something that says, you are not responsible for what other people's image of you is in their mind. That's their creation. That's their choice. And that's really kind of liberating. That's really fun. So it's a thing that to think about, that if you don't enjoy what you're experiencing right now, change. Change your attitude about anything. Change your ability to do a number of things. I've had an opportunity to travel a great deal. And in my travels, I've been around the world twice. And that sounds kind of interesting, but, when I was raised with a woman whose husband died 4 days after her birthday. And my father was 38 years old. He had a massive heart attack. Boom, he was gone. And she was 3 months pregnant with me. And so we moved into the projects because she was told that that's all she could afford, which wasn't true, but she believed it, and so she did. So she raised me and two of my three sisters in the projects. And all the time I was growing up as a little boy, I thought, well, my dad died at 38, so when I get to be 38, that's about as far as I'm going to get. Well, in about 2 months, I'm going to be 80, so I guess that wasn't true. I've been 38 a lot of times already. So, but it was an interesting thing. So you never thought when you were living in the projects that you were going to be going to college. What's a college? Or university, or that you would even travel around the world, or that you would meet people who were counselors to presidents of the United States, or that you would meet royalty, or that you would meet anything. And in this lifetime, I've had all of that as opportunities. You know, when I was ready to go to Tibet the first time, I have a spiritually adopted Indian son. His name is Sanjar Imam, and he went over to Dharamshala, which is in northern India, to meet the Dalai Lama and to ask him, you know, about my coming over and bringing some priests with me and that sort of thing. So he said, well, it's really not safe to go to Tibet anymore, but, you know, here's what you can do and whatnot. So my son met him, though, on an airplane, not in Dharamshala. And eventually I ended up going to Dharamshala, and I took a group of priests with me. And we sat up on a platform, sort of like this. There were 2 chairs over here and 2 chairs over here. I sat here with one of my priests was sitting next to me, my assistant, and the head lama was here with his assistant over there. And you know, it's interesting if you've been raised in the projects. First of all, you don't even know what a college is, and now you're in Dharamshala sitting on a dais with a lama. I mean, that's a stretch. You know. So the first half of the morning, the head lama was going to be teaching the group. So he was teaching, and he was going on, you know, wah, 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 wah. And there was a translator over here, and the head lama would teach, and we get like 3 words out of this little monk here. So the lama realized we weren't getting the full message, and so he redressed this guy, and he backed out. He almost cried, I think. And then in walked this guy in like a Brooks Brothers suit. I mean, I was impressed. And you've seen the Dalai Lama often in videos and whatever, and whenever he shows up, there's this really neat guy that sits with him. This is one of his best friends, but he is the translator for the Dalai Lama, and quite often shows up in a suit sometimes or whatever. Well, this guy comes walking in, and he went and did the translation, which was really, really fun. So after the first talk was over, the Dalai Lama said, well, I mean, not the Dalai Lama, the Lama who was there, the resident Lama said, does anyone have any questions? And my son and one of my children was with us, 2 of them, all my kids were there. And my son raised his hand, and I thought, oh no, my son's going to ask a question. He said, well, I've been looking around this room, and I noticed that you all shave your heads. The men do, the women do, and you're all dressed in orange. Is there some reason for that? And the head Lama said, well, have you noticed the price of shampoo in India? Well, we went for lunch, and while I was in this one bookstore, whatever it was called, this book literally fell into my hand, and it was called The Tibetan Fire Rituals. And in the Tibetan fire rituals, there are 3 vowel tones that they use to invoke the Kundalini, which is the fire within you, which helps you to come into realization or getting reborn, if you want to look at it that way. And those 3 vowel tones were the same 3 vowel tones that I'd been using for almost 20 years when I did the ordinations of the priests. Not in the same order, but it's the same 3 vowel tones. And so I thought, well, that's really exciting. And so it was an interesting trip to take. But often I think about that young kid who was in the projects, who didn't even know what a college was, ended up going to a college, going to graduate school. I went to 3 seminaries, and the guy was introducing me, and I had to laugh to myself because he said, and one of them was in Boston or something like that. Well, you know, they asked me to leave there. They did. I've always been a maverick. And so, you know, I was involved in a coffee house in the Boston Commons. The Commons is a big sort of a park that runs through the middle of Boston, called it the Commons. And in those days, there were hippies. Some of you don't remember hippies. Most of you do. I can see a lot of gray hair out there. So it was an opportunity to have a coffee house. And so we took this old Baptist church and we opened a coffee house. Well, some of the residents of the church were really incensed with this. And so they talked to so-and-so and so-and-so. They got back to the seminary, and the president of the seminary, his last name was Peck, called me into his office, and he said, well, we think you're really a great guy and all that, and your grades are pretty good, but he said, you can't stay here because this fellow who was giving them a lot of money didn't want me in the school. So he said, you can go to Yale, you can go to Harvard, but you can't stay here. So I thought, well, that's interesting, you know. So when I was in the projects, I used to go to the local Baptist church. And I used to sit in the front so that nobody would see me. Crazy. I'm tall and I'm big. I used to be 6'2". I would sit right in the front so that nobody would see me, you know. And so this guy said, now where was I? What was I talking about?
Getting kicked out of seminary.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, they said, you can't stay here. So the Baptist church where I came from had a new minister. And this guy was a graduate of Crozer Theological School. Hi there. And so Dr. Martin Luther King went to graduate school. Went to Crozer Seminary when it was outside Philadelphia. So we were sitting in a small classroom. We all had these desks. And I know some of you aren't even old enough to remember this, but there used to be ink wells in the desk. Remember those? And you used to dip your fountain pen in that, and that's where you got your ink from. And we would sit there, and he would tell us all these stories about Dr. Martin Luther King when he was a student. And we used to touch the desk like, gee, did Martin sit here? This is really wild, you know? So here's a kid from the projects now sitting in a classroom where Dr. Martin Luther King went to school. And it was another seminary, you know, and they said, well, yeah, you got caught in the old snafu because the guy who gave Andover Newton all this money didn't want you to go to that school anymore, so that's why you're here. But we don't care about that, so you can stay here. Well, they were involved in the anti-war movement, that seminary. And so some of our students who were involved in some of the local colleges stole a Xerox machine, and they stole all these documents that were not like Donald. This is different. They took all these documents and they Xeroxed them and they handed them out, you know. So, but what they did was they exposed the fact that the CIA or whatever was going on was having these secretaries listen to the conversations of professors on phone to find out if they were communists. Oh my God, you know, it was like pre-McCarthy or something. I don't know what it was. But anyway, I was having a dinner party at my house with some of these students, and there's a knock on the door, and it was the FBI agent. Do you know any of these people? No. Well, they're all sitting at my dining room table. And they never found out, you know, who took the Xerox machine and all that. But anyway, I went to that school until they asked me to leave. So I ended up going to Colgate Divinity School up in Rochester, New York. And I never wanted to go to that one because it felt like they carbon copied all their pastors. And, you know, you're just like so-and-so and just like so-and-so. And I didn't want to be one of those. But I ended up there, and I'm an artist, I'm a poet and whatever. And so I didn't quite fit in that niche, you know, of a theological student, but I did the best I could. So I went into filmmaking. And so when I finally graduated as a minister, my ordination was for becoming a filmmaker and a minister or a pastor. So I had a dual ordination kind of thing. Well, it was an interesting thing to get bounced from school to school to school until finally I graduated from Colgate Divinity School because Crozer blended with Kodak, with Xerox. And Crozer and Colgate blended. And in Rochester was Xerox and Kodak. That's where that fits. And now those companies don't exist anymore, and neither does that seminary. It got down to just an office building somewhere in Rochester, and now I don't even know if they're even around anymore. I'm still here. The kid from the projects who got to go around the world and meet all these incredible human beings. So you could possibly say that I went through a rebirthing experience about every so-and-so years. I think astrologically every 33 years, if you have an opportunity to grow spiritually, it happens about every 33rd year. So from 11 to 33, 11 to 22 to 33 to 44, you get this break in spirituality. And so I looked at my life and I realized that when some of my books were published, they were always published on those particular breaks in the 33rd year, which was really kind of exciting. So I'm on my tractor, I'm at John Deere in my backyard, and the third book finally came out, and the Spirit said, well, your job was to get that book done, and it's done. So your work is over with this part of it, and that work will be here forever. It's like Gideon's Bibles. It'll be here forever. So I thought, well, I did my job. There's an opportunity to do something. I did it, and I'm grateful for it. So rebirthing is not just a process of having a near death or whatever. It can be your own creation, but a beautiful encounter with your own reality. And how am I doing with the purple light there?
What's that?
How am I doing with the purple light? They have a purple light up in the back, and if I talk too long, a light goes on, and I have time to shut up or something like that. Well, it's been an interesting thing growing old, because a lot of facilities that I used to have, I no longer have. Continuity is one of them, as you can tell. But it is a thing that happens as you grow older, and your mind functions differently than it used to. And so I have a new life partner, and we were watching a YouTube, and it was me talking at a church somewhere down in Virginia Beach. They had asked me to come and talk for like 20 minutes. And I thought, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for having me come today. So I got up and I started talking. I talked for 3 hours. I said, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Well, I was entertaining myself, I guess. And they all sat there, so I guess they were okay with it, But when I found out they had a purple light, I thought, oh, thank God, Because now that I'm older, I have no bounds anymore. I mean, it's interesting when you get older, because you get to your 60s and you still care about some things. By 70s, you don't really care about much of anything. By 80, you could care about anything, So if there's a purple light, so there's a purple light. But I said, I will pay attention. I will be myself, So this rebirth commission was really an interesting thing when I got it, because I thought, there's so many ways you can approach that. But that you approach it is most important, that you take your life into stock. Because when you die, and we all will, when you go back, you're going to have a life review. And in the life review, you will re-experience everything you ever did from the time you were born until that moment that you passed. You will remember every dream that you ever had, but you're going to remember now that in all your dreams that your soul or your higher self was teaching you. And so you wake up, and the impulse or the intuitions you have to do things is the guidance you get from your higher power, kind of thing. If you had an experience when you offended somebody in that dream, that person will be in your reality, but you are not responsible for what they choose to think or feel, or what you did to them you were responsible for, but what they do with that, you're not responsible for. And I found that to be in sync with what the Buddhists were teaching, which I thought was really funny, So who knew that Sesame Street was teaching karma, It was fascinating. But there's an opportunity that everyone has, that you don't have to go and sit under a tree. You don't have to have a tree fall on you and die and come back. It's just a point of determination. I desire to be awake. I desire to be aware. I desire to know. And then you will. You have to ask to receive. It's just like, with this guy knocking on the door. That's all about. So if you have the desire to know, maybe you're content with everything, which is fine. You should be. You should be happy. You have the right to be happy. I love what the Dalai Lama says. He's about 7 years older than I am right now. And for him to walk, he needs 2 companions on either side so he can get up and go across the room. He no longer travels. He's too feeble to do that. And yet, people from Yale and Harvard came and sat with him recently, and his mind was clear as a bell. It was wonderful. But he, was a great teacher, and I've listened to him for many, many years. I've learned a lot from him. I'm so grateful that they have things. Oh, you were talking about YouTubes of the speakers who were ever here? My God, you must have about 20 of my YouTubes on your catalog. Is that right, Gary? I said, oh my God, it would be interesting to see what I had to say 20 years ago, and to what's happening today. But it's a joy to be here, especially since we survived the pandemic. It's a joy to be able to be spoken with or to with one another, and to have an opportunity to get on with life. It's an interesting thing. I had a class yesterday for ordination, and after class I spoke to my partner and I said, from my point of view, I did not do as well as I would like to have done. And part of that is because of how lapses happen in the brain and all that sort of thing. I said, maybe it's about time for me to finally retire once and for all. He said, oh, no, you're fine. But I know what I'm living with, My intention in coming here today, I have a whole list of things in this pocket that I wanted to talk about that you're not going to hear. So it's an opportunity to be that. So I'm being guested by a family here in Minnesota, and there's a saying on the wall that this child said, and he says, sometimes you will be scared, but that will pass, and you will be fine, So sometimes things happen, and it's scary, but then you'll be fine. You'll be fine. There's a prayer that some ministers give, and it's they don't say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to paraphrase it. May the unconditional love of consciousness be between me and you while we are together and while we are apart. And so it is. And that's what happens. And so I want to thank you for having an opportunity, for letting me come here and to spend some time with you. It's been a while. I think it's been since 2019 that I've been here, and I hope that in some way, in somewhat of it dribbled out of my mouth, you've had some opportunity to have a personal realization so that you don't have to go sit under a tree somewhere and get awakened, or that have a near-death experience that perhaps you can learn. The 3 books that have been written have all the truths in it that can help you in your process. So, as they say in India at the end of a greeting or whatever, it's namaste. But in the West we say, have a nice day. And thank you so much.
Lake Harriet, thank you so much, Dan Chesbro. Namaste and have a good day. So that's going to stick. I like it. I like it a lot. Now as we're going to do our offering, as we do each week. Lake Harriet is funded by your donations. This is our building. We take care of it, and we do everything from the gardening to the painting. This is our primary source of income, and it allows us to keep the lights on and bring all of these amazing experiences to you. We do invite you to become a partner. Go to the website, become a member. You'll get emails once a week, I think, is all. And we are just so grateful for your support. At this time, we will do offering, but I'm reminded to do a bit of a piece. Turn to your left, turn to your right, say hi to your neighbor while we're listening to some music and we're performing our offering.
Before, at least until now, learned by heart the hard and easy parts. But I'm feeling it clearly. The old song's grown weary. I will sing a new song. The old ones carried me this far and for so long. But it's time to walk on, lifting up my voice and heart with a new song. How it grows out of the last echo, a new song for new needs, so I'll follow its lead. Here I stand, all I truly am, so I'll rise and let up this new curious cup. I will sing a new song. The old ones carried me this far and for so long, but it's time to walk on, lifting up my voice and heart with a new song.
Thank you. Well, you may not need to go sit under a tree, but you may enjoy taking a walk down the hill, sitting at the lake, taking a walk down the other hill, sitting in the village and just enjoying your day, the people around you, and the sun. And now if you might raise your hands and repeat after me. God's perfect love, flowing through me, blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. Thank you. Now, as we like to do, we're going to make a little circle. We're going to join hands, and Mr. Chesbro is going to leave us with a little party. We might cut across a convenient place.
Did you want to leave the microphone on?
It's on.
Okay.
Now, this comes from pure memory, because for 8 years I had a church in upstate New York, and after all the services that we had, these were things from common prayer that the ministers used to give. And so it's an easy one for me to remember. Say, may the Lord bless you. And when I would say, may pure consciousness, which is love, bless you, and keep you, and make His awareness shine through you, and be gracious unto you. May it lift your light of consciousness